live stream earlier, and I polled everyone about what time we were going to do the live stream. Nobody's on yet. That's normal. And everyone said 6 o'clock, and someone chimed in and said, "Who gets who gets home at 6?" And that's a good question. Now, obviously, you got to factor in time zones when you think about like how do you get home at 6 o'clock when your workday ends at 5? Time zones. That's how. But I'll be interested to see how many minutes go by before people jump on. There's somebody. People are jumping on now. If you are just jumping on, I was mentioning how rare it is to, from my perspective anyway, being in Houston, so Central Standard Time, to be off of work and home and able to do something like this by 6 o'clock. So I'm curious to know where you're where everybody works. You don't have to tell me exactly where. Like I work in this office building on this street. Don't do that. But like, what do you do for a living? Because somebody brought that up earlier. Like, how does anyone get off of work in time to tune into a 6 p.m. live stream? So it would be interesting. Lots of hellos and howdies from. I'm assuming most of this is probably from the Texas area. I'm seeing an Astros logo. Shout outs from Austin. I'd be willing to bet you. I have a lot of subscribers from outside America. Like, actually get statistics on this. Like from the creator studio that like you use when you're monetized. But I would be willing to bet you when I do things like live streams and stuff like that or posts, most of the people looking at it are probably from the majority of people looking at it are probably from the southern United States. But I get a lot of international viewers like this one, love from Bangladesh. Thank you, incredible to have viewers from different parts of the world. Correct me if I'm wrong from saying this the wrong way. Boa noche, is that how you say that in Brazilian Portuguese? Which is like a good night or a good evening greeting. Always wanted to go to Brazil. Okay, Jacob says he's in tech sales. Jason Fulton says he's a greenhouse owner. Just so do you sell plants? That's interesting. What is I don't know what that means. Like, what does a greenhouse owner do? Do you sell the plants? Do you grow plants for people? Do you grow a special variety of plants that are very quickly becoming legal? Let me know if that's the case. Still only a sophomore in high school. Do your homework. No, I hate homework. I think because I was a teacher for a while. I have an education background, so homework is something I don't particularly like about the education model in Western countries. The way homework is just like consumes the second half of a kid's day. It's not healthy. It also is indicative of a teacher who can't get their lesson in its entirety within the time they have, and that's just lazy teaching. Albany, New York, work remotely most of the time. What do you do? I want to know what you do. Working remotely could mean you work. You could work on somebody's website. You could do a number of things. I don't know. You're in Virginia. Oh, cool. Pastry chef. What? Capitol Grill in Jacksonville, Florida. The next time I am in Florida, which should be in the next couple of months if my plans don't get ruined, I will try to stop at the Capitol Grill in Jacksonville, Florida. Channelview, Texas, go Astros. You're in college, take morning classes. Okay, well, that's cool. Get your classes out of the way in the morning. You could have a whole campus have a meltdown over a deadly game of paintball just to get their class schedule set in the morning and then take a 5-day weekend. That's a Community reference for anyone who doesn't know. It's one of the best shows ever made. In Kentucky, Verizon sales. Okay, cool. You clean aquariums all throughout Houston's surrounding counties. Huh, that's cool. Lots of viewers from Bangladesh, but they're asleep now. I get a lot of viewers from. I'll tell you where I get a lot of views from. A shocking number of comments And I say shocking because it's just, I'm a random guy from Houston, Texas. You never think of yourself as going to be popular in other parts of the world, let alone your own. But I get a lot of comments from Indonesia, like a shocking number. Let's see. Big stuff coming. Yeah, so the title of this video, it's just kind of a reference to, in addition, well, for one, and I'll say this several times because I want to kind of hype this video up when it drops because it's going to be a good one. One of the biggest fish ever on the channel. Like, one of the very biggest fish ever on the channel coming soon. In fact, it'll be the next video. I'm not going to tell you when that's going to be, but keep your eye out because when the next video drops, it's a monster. An absolute dragon of an animal. So yeah, literally big fish coming, but also just I'm excited about the AnimalCon 2023 conference that's coming up in Orlando. If you guys didn't see that, it's kind of, obviously the title is a take on Comic-Con, but it's it's going to be a pretty big event. It's like the second or third one they've done. They're anticipating a couple of thousand people to be there. They've got, last time I checked, it was about 120, 130. It's probably closer to 150 now. But don't quote me on that. You can actually go look yourself. Different wildlife YouTubers that are or influencers that are showing up to do all kinds of panels and speaking events and meet people, and I'm one of them, so I'm very excited about that. Sell houses throughout Houston. I might be in contact with you soon because I desperately want to move out of this apartment and get a house. Selling everything veggies. I manage perennial shrubs, mostly native, nothing combustible. Can you? I guess a lot of plants are combustible if you think about it. Oh, you're referencing what I was talking about. Got it. Mainly north side of Houston. I found your channels from the other fishing channels. Oh, one of the other fishing channels, Captures Dave. Yeah, no, that's a good channel. Would you ever do a meet and greet or fish with subscribers? Fishing with subscribers is incredibly difficult, and I've done it a few times, and it's just it makes things hard from the filming perspective. So basically, you have to resign yourself. I think I mentioned this on one of the last live streams I did. But basically, if you're going to fish with a subscriber, you kind of have to resign yourself to the probability that you're not going to get anything good on camera, because it becomes about fishing with the subscriber and not about doing whatever it takes to get the film done. And I just don't like losing that kind of time. So I've fished with subscribers a couple of times, and the reason you haven't seen it is because I didn't get any films done. But as far as meet and greets go, come to Orlando, come to AnimalCon 2023. I'm going to be there. You can meet me there. My voice is already starting to go, if you guys haven't noticed. This is one of the reasons I've been wanting to do a live stream, another one, for like 2 weeks, and I haven't because I've been horrifically sick. I'm not going to say the word because I'm still not sure how the YouTube algorithm is cracking down on references of it, but the sickness we're all still very weary of. I did a test for that a few days ago and came back negative, but it was bad, man. Like the first couple of days I was sick. I'm still coughing. But the first couple of days I was sick, I was like coughing up blood. I don't think I told my wife that. So if she sees this, she'll probably get mad at me. But like the first 2 days I was coughing and I was blowing my nose and there was like blood. I was getting really, really sick. But I'm getting past it now. Missed you in Texas and Iowa now after Gar. Oh, yeah, Iowa's got a great fishery. Check out 25-pound blue cat out of the Farmers Branch of Irving. It was epic for me. Do you have a YouTube channel? Morales Outdoors. I'll look it up. I'm going to go hang out with my friend for a bit. It was nice popping into the stream. Have a good one. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for coming in. Tell your friend I said hi. Unless your friend isn't subscribed, in which case lead with that. Hey, what's up? I'm trying not to lose my voice in the middle of a live stream. Wait, what do for work? You mean what do I do for work? I do this for work. I used to work for the Houston Zoo. I used to work for the Houston Zoo for quite a long time. I was a conservation educator with the Houston Zoo, and now I'm a full-time YouTuber. So this is what I do for work. What do you do for work? Who inspired me to catch alligator gar? No particular person inspired me to catch that fish. It's not like I looked at some other video or film. I actually wasn't inspired to do YouTube by any American YouTubers. That's the thing. I was inspired to. I've always wanted to be a wildlife presenter on camera, I'm older than a lot of people think I am. I'm going to be 34 this year. So I grew up as a child. I did not have internet access. The internet was barely a thing, and I lived way out in the country. So even when it became a thing, and a lot of people had access to high speed internet, I did not. So I would just consume. My grandmother would record hundreds, and I mean hundreds. I had like a gigantic stack of them. VHS cassettes of Steve Irwin and Nigel Marvin and Jeff Corwin and Austin Stevens and all these conservation educators that would get on, bits on Animal Planet and other types of networks, Discovery Channel, things like that. And I would just watch it for hours and hours and hours. When I wasn't watching that, I'd be outside trying to catch these animals myself. Mostly snakes and lizards and frogs, things like that. Herpetology was kind of like my entry into wildlife conservation. And I've always wanted to be on television as a wildlife presenter. And when YouTube became a thing in 2005, I would have been about 16 years old, almost 17 at the time. So, you know, YouTube didn't really become a prospect for a career until I was well into my mid 20s. That's when people started like proving you could do this for a job, with the exception of like the very original people who got in on the ground floor. So eventually I was like, you know what? I could probably take what I've learned in a professional capacity working with the Houston Zoo as a wildlife educator, and I could probably, instead of getting on TV, because you got to know all the right people to do that, and it still may not work out for you. Whereas anyone can make a YouTube channel, and that's the trade-off. Like anyone can do it, but because anyone can do it, your competition, it's not better. The more highly trained people, more professional people are going to be the ones trying to get into television, at least until recently. Recently, that's changed. But at the time, it was just harder to get noticed. And one of the things that convinced me to do YouTube was not people catching alligator gar. It was actually UK fishermen, Graham Pullen specifically, catching carp. And that's why if you look at my early YouTube videos, they're all carp oriented. And then I saw river monsters, and I was like, ooh, Jeremy Wade is doing something interesting with this stingray videos that he did. I said videos, the millions and millions of people viewed it on Animal Planet, and it's insulting to call it a video. The episodes that he filmed with the giant whiptail ray in Thailand, I was like, oh, that's interesting. He's catching these bizarre fish right under these people's feet, because their villages in that section, that area of Thailand, are built around the Mai Klong River. And I was like, ooh, I got to find a version of that, because that's so interesting. Urban wildlife has always fascinated me. Leopards, coyotes, things like that. And I was like, I'm going to try to catch fish within like Houston city limits. And then as I started doing that, I was like, what's the most interesting thing I could catch? And naturally it was like, oh, I discovered that there are these fish. I knew what alligator gar were, always knew what alligator gar were. I was a professional wildlife educator. It's not like I didn't know what they were. But I didn't realize you could catch such enormous specimen within city limits of a major like metropolitan area like Houston. So it was like piecing things together. It was like wanting to be Steve Irwin and wanting to be Jeff Corwin, seeing Graham Pullen catch carp, seeing Jeremy Wade catch stingray within, a city's urban areas on the other side of the world, and me kind of taking all these little pieces and being like, ooh, I can do that with alligator gar, and I can do it in Houston, and I can kind of fulfill that dream to be a wildlife educator on camera. Spots are secret. I don't know the reference that you're saying that about. Like, what do you mean spots are you talking? Well, that's the thing. Sometimes I'll read a thing and I'll assume it's being spoken to me, and then I'll like move back up through the. Oh yeah. See, that's the thing. Spots are secret, and I'm like, oh, that sounds. If you read that out of context, if you miss the previous comment, it sounds like somebody's like talking down to you. But then you got to scroll back up. You got to calm yourself down, scroll back up, and it says, I could guide you to some monster carp or smallmouth buffalo here in Austin. The spots are secret. I think that's how I'm reading that. Like you're telling me about how good the spots are. That's one of the things I've had to learn the hard way about being on the internet so often, is like, don't jump to fight with people so quickly. I'll still do that from time to time, but I'm not as bad about it as I used to be. I would love to come to Austin and catch giant carp. Message me on Instagram. Oh, see, I'm still missing things. There's a comment in the middle of these two things where somebody's asking for the spot, and you're saying the spots are secret. See, context matters so much. It's so easy to accidentally start fights with people if you're not getting all of the context. And when you're scrolling, I don't know if you guys can see the screen I'm on. I'm assuming you can because you're talking to each other. Just like comment after comment. So it's hard for me to get all the context necessary. Sometimes coughing up blood is, well, I'm going to take everything you're saying. No offense, I'm going to take everything you're saying with a grain of salt unless you are a doctor. All right, do not get medical information off of YouTube. Okay, that's good advice. If you cough up a lot of blood, you might want to get checked out. It was a little bit, and it stopped after the first like 2 days. So at the moment, everything is fine. But I am very much in the camp of yes, being on the side of like if you are in doubt, there's no doubt. Go see a doctor. Yes. If you guys didn't know, I'm wearing Alex Pereira Poatan Hands of Stone, my current favorite UFC fighter at the moment. I love him. He's going to fight Israel Adesanya for the second time in mixed martial arts, fourth time across mixed martial arts and kickboxing this weekend. He's won all three, two by knockout, one by decision, and I've got him winning this weekend. You should go get some rainbow trout at the Guadalupe near Canyon Lake on the horse. I almost did that this morning. I was thinking about where I could go because the weather's so bad, and I was like, oh, the trout are always, they prefer the cold. But my dog is barking at my wife who just walked in. I thought about getting the trout, but I've always had such a hard time getting that bite down. Those trout are hard to catch. Jeremy White is the GOAT. Yeah, he is. I mean, he's kind of the reason why I do what I do, or why it is possible that I do what I do. If you go back quite a ways, there were some programs on the Disney Channel. I can't remember the name of this. Not the Disney Channel you're thinking of, like 1990s, but like Walt Disney produced an outdoors program, and I cannot remember the name of it. But it was the gateway for so many professional wildlife educators to get on television. And then the first one to kind of become what we all think of today when you think of a wildlife presenter on television was probably Jack Hanna. He was the first big one. And then Steve Irwin kind of came along and just is kind of, Steve Irwin kind of had like what's called what I refer to as like the Jimi Hendrix effect, where Jimi Hendrix, Bruce Lee, these guys, they did not invent what they do. They were not the first people to do what they did. They weren't even the only people to do it at the time. But they did it so well and in such a unique way that it changed what they did. And if you were going to draw a line in the history of that practice that they were engaged in, there's guitar playing up to Jimi Hendrix and there's guitar playing after Jimi Hendrix. It was never the same after. And that's not to say like, oh, it got better or oh, it got worse. It's just that was a mark to measure by. Jimi Hendrix is a mark to measure the history of the guitar in. And Steve Irwin was not the first person to do what he did. But he was kind of like that Jimi Hendrix where it was like everything's different now. And then you had guys like, Jeff Corwin come along. And Jeff Corwin, in my opinion, is like the Jackie Chan to Steve Irwin's Bruce Lee. Steve Irwin was like, never ever showed a hint of like human fear doing the most insane stuff. And Jeff Corwin played the other route. He was like, he's more, what do you call it? It's easier to relate to Jeff Corwin than it is to relate to Steve Irwin. You watch Steve Irwin because what he's doing is absolutely insane. And you watch Jeff Corwin because it's more relatable, because he is not afraid to show you that he's terrified of primates, which, by the way, is incredibly reasonable. If you have ever worked around primates, they are absolutely terrifying. But anyway, yeah. So different wildlife professionals, went about what they were doing in different ways. But absolutely nobody seemed to have an interest in freshwater fish at that level until Jeremy Wade came along. You had guys like Bill Dance doing like bass fishing, the kind of thing that your uncle would watch on TV when you went over to your cousin's house or something. He'd be watching Bill Dance. on the old, 90s style. Like the think about this. Think about like this cam. I'm going to describe a camera shot to you, and it's going to describe this um, setting in the 90s when Bill Dance was doing what he was doing. Guys like that. It's a guy on a boat being filmed from the perspective of generally a second boat or from the very back of his own boat. And it's a slow zoom with a hint of some kind of like country instrument under it, like a banjo, maybe an acoustic guitar, very light. And then like the edits are all like fade edits as like cameras zooming slowly. And then like it's a very very unique personality, but like the level of like charisma is not, there's not a lot of effort there. The guy's just being himself, which is fine. But it's not like the guy's like going over the top to get you engaged in what he's doing. He's going to do what he's going to do, and if you want to watch, you're going to watch. And that was like the scene in the 90s for fishing programs. And there were guys in the UK doing the same thing, like Terry Hearns, probably one of the greatest carp fishermen in the world. If you don't know who he is, Terry Hearns is the man. But guys like that would have like these programs where they would go fishing, and they would be televised from time to time. And they were all these very, very slowly paced, slowly edited, barely edited programs that did not really capitalize, I think, on how amazing the animals were. It was just assuming that you were already interested in fishing. And Jeremy Wade was the first guy who was like, I'm going to show you the most insane animal you've ever seen. This animal's going to blow your mind. This animal's going to scare you. It's going to inspire you. You're going to freak out when you see this thing that that I'm going to show you. And then it would be a fish. Of all things, it would be a fish. And half the time it'd be a fish that people didn't even know existed. Because, River Monsters aired in 2005. That's when social media was created. Facebook and YouTube, I think, and the first iPhone, I think, all came around 2005. So some people, fishermen in Texas, were familiar with the alligator gar. The vast majority of people in the world were not. That was I think the first episode of River Monsters was the alligator gar. Very few people knew about whiptail ray or wolf fish or the Goliath tigerfish. And he was the first guy who was taking the techniques that guys like Bill Dance were using that only appeal to people who already fished. And he was presenting it in this insanely like charismatic and potentially risky way like Steve Irwin was doing. So really, really amazing like combination of things that Jeremy Wade all kind of brought together. And I think Jeremy Wade specifically is the reason why fishing on YouTube is a thing now. All right, any hints on the amazing fish coming up? It's big. It's much bigger than me. It weighs multiple hundreds of pounds. And it's one of the best releases I've done in a long time. Have you ever actually tried to eat alligator gar? No, I do not eat alligator gar under any circumstance. I have never killed an alligator gar before. Do I ever fish for fun without filming? No, I don't. I actually was thinking about this the other day when I was in Florida, and I might have mentioned this. I get a lot of the same questions, and sometimes when I answer a question, okay, let's be honest. Every time I answer questions, I kind of go off on tangents. And when I was in Florida, I stopped by a spillway to film the next morning, and I thought about just having a few casts for fun. And it was nighttime, and I didn't have any filming lights, so I couldn't film it. And I just didn't want to. I just wasn't interested. And that's the thing I think a lot of people don't actually know. I do enjoy fishing, but I don't enjoy it as much as people think I do. For me, it's about the wildlife presentation on camera. That is what I live for. That kind of stuff I just love. I love filming. I love camera work. I love being on camera. I love talking on camera. I love showing animals on camera. Fishing is just the way I have to get them, because you can't film underwater in the Brazos River or Lake Houston, or you might be able to get away with it in certain parts of Lake Houston, but like freshwater in general is very murky. And if you want to show off these really big fish that live in this murky water, you got to get them out somehow. Fishing's the way I do that. It's not that I just love fishing. I just love fish. Not quite the same thing. Have I ever tried sturgeon fishing? I have a trip that I'm having some guys help me put together very soon. Hopefully that will happen. Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. Yes. Yes. That's the one. God, yes. Thank you for that. Ah, yeah, great. That was great. Marlon Perkins. That was great. I remember Steve Irwin jumping out of small boats onto alligators on Saturday mornings after cartoons. Yeah, the dude was a psycho. I love Steve Irwin, but let me be very clear because Steve Irwin was, in addition to being a wildlife presenter on TV, the guy was the runner, the director, if you will. That was probably his actual title. Either him or his dad had the title of director of the Australia Zoo in Queensland. And my experience working in a zoo is not running the zoo. I was never a zoo director, but I've done quite a number of um, aspects of work in a zoo, not just education. And I have to say, there's a lot of things that he did in his zoos and practices that were, carried out through his zoo that fundamentally I don't agree with as being very good zoo practices. And they're not in regards to animal treatment. I think he's ahead of the curve on that in a lot of ways. It was the way that he and his staff were allowed to and trained to interact with animals. I have a lot of issues with the way he did things like that. In fact, he had, over the years, both when he was alive and after he passed away, multiple keepers at the Australia Zoo in Queensland have been nearly killed by animals in situations where they were interacting with an animal that I fundamentally believe they should not have been in contact with. Do I like Coyote Peterson? Yes, of course. Uh, oh, he is easily. Oh, my dog brought me a toy. Hang on. Come here. Come here. Come get it. Come here. She's waiting for me to throw it. She doesn't want to get on camera. Go get it. Okay. Coyote Peterson is easily the most successful wildlife YouTube personality who is strictly a wildlife YouTube personality. Coyote Peterson, I also believe, has a zoo background. He doesn't talk about it a lot, but I do believe I've heard him mention that he worked in a zoo. I believe as a keeper in some respect. I have to do some research on that, but I do believe he has a professional zoo background. Been slamming the trout and smallmouths in Canyon Lake. Ooh, been wanting to catch smallmouths again. I just didn't know where to go for them. Oh, you got a red horse over there too. Nice. If you trust me with the screenshots of where you got this fish, just send it to my Instagram. I will keep them secret. I will not tell anyone where they are. I can't even guarantee I'll get up that way to go fishing for them, but if I do, I'll shout you out. World of Wildlife is far more entertaining. Jack's World of Wildlife is far more entertaining than Coyote Peterson. Coyote plays up the drama way too much. Well, that's it's hard to say whether or not that's right or wrong. If you find someone more entertaining than another person, then they are. If I'm more entertaining than someone to you or someone else, then I am. If I'm not, then I'm not. That's the thing. You can't insist upon yourself or someone else being more entertaining. It's all about the eye of the beholder. Coyote Peterson understands, and one of the things I'd recommend to think about with Coyote Peterson, he understands how to get eyes on the product to sell conservation information. That's where a lot of conservation educators fail really hard, is they do not understand how to get people interested in what they have to say. A lot of conservation educators, and this is one of the reasons that I ended up leaving the education department in Houston Zoo originally, because I worked for more than one department when I was there. When you're in education as a teacher, because like a lot of things, an education department has multiple roles. Not everyone in an education department is actively teaching stuff. My wife who I'm pointing to over there, has been in the education department longer than most of the people there, and basically she keeps the entire thing from falling apart. But she doesn't actually teach a lot of programming. She does some, but she doesn't do it all. But a lot of zoo educators are far too used to people coming into a program they're teaching with the mindset of, I am here to learn something. And what I found from experience from years and years and years of talking to thousands of people, thousands and thousands of people, because the Houston Zoo would get 10, 15,000 people a day in in the busiest seasons, and I would talk to as many of them as I could, and it was part of my job is to talk to as many of them as I could throughout the day. I would talk to thousands of people a week. The vast majority of people in a zoo are not interested in learning things. They're trying to kill time. They're getting their kids out of the house. They want to see their idea of an animal, not how the animal actually is. So they get frustrated when the lion isn't running and roaring and fighting because they want to see their perception of the wild animal, not the actual wild animal. Lions don't really do that most of the time in the wild or captivity. So you have to understand how to get people interested in your product before you can reliably uh, give them conservation information that will be remembered and have an effect on those people. That's one of the reasons Jeremy Wade, that's the entire reason Jeremy Wade does his program from the whole like river monster point of view. Like he always starts it off as like a detective program. Like I've heard a story about, a young man who was swimming in Lake Kariba in Africa. Witnesses said that he put a shiny necklace on and moments later the water was churning with blood. And then he like gets you hooked with this like gruesome story and you're like, "Oh my God. Like, oh, did these fish eat this guy alive?" And then through the course of the program, you learn that like maybe someone was bit, maybe somebody was injured or had a close call, and he is always very clear to prove throughout the course of the episode the story is generally exaggerated. There's a very normal and natural reason that any of it happened based on the animal's behavior, and no, the animal's not actually a monster. And then he explains why the animal may or may not have behaved in the way people think it did, and he explains it in a way that makes you care more about the animal than you did or ever thought you would have before. Jeremy Wade knows how to get people hooked on his program so he can deliver conservation information. And Coyote Peterson is one of the best at doing that on YouTube. He plays up the drama. He plays up the drama real high, real hard. And as a result, he gets conservation information in front of millions and millions and millions of people on a regular basis. So I don't mind that at all. I love watching your videos. Thank you so much. How are you so confident when Gar won't get your hand when you're releasing off and stroking the snout in my videos? Well, I wouldn't say I'm so confident they won't. I'm just hyper aware of what the animal's doing when I'm around them. Because you got to remember, in addition to fishing, virtually every day, every weekday. I don't fish on the weekends because I try to spend it with my wife because she has weekends off. But virtually every weekday for like the last 5 years I've been fishing. So you get very used to the way fish behave when you're handling them. And before that, again, I have a professional wildlife background, and part of that was being professionally trained on how to handle a variety of animals. And then before that, I just did it because that's what kids do when you want to do that for a living. You go out and you catch alligators and snakes and things. You get very, very used to and in tune with the way animals behave when they're being handled and how they start to behave differently when they decide they don't want you to handle them anymore. And 99 times out of 100, if you're very careful and you're observant and you are extremely practiced and well trained, you kind of have this, I don't want to call it a sixth sense because that's inflating the idea of what it is, but basically you're just in tune with the way the animal's behaving to the point where you can tell, you can feel the way the animal is like, okay, I'm done with this. And you kind of like back off, you change your grip. And sometimes it doesn't happen. I mean, like, how many times have you guys seen me on the show get smacked by an alligator gar real hard? And, part of you knows it's coming. And part of me has to be okay with that. It's just part of the job. But, yeah, you're right. I have never been bitten by an alligator gar. A large part of it is just the fact that they don't really bite that often. It looks like they would because their teeth are so scary looking, but they're not really biters. They're thrashers. And I have been knocked around quite a bit by them. But yeah, you get used to the way animals behave when they're going to try to bite you. And you just have to just be attuned to that when you're handling them. Greetings from Houston. Hello, I'm also in Houston. Mutual of Omaha is what I grew up on. Yeah, same here. I mean, that would have been the very first things I had available as a very young child. I remember watching that show. You know, not obviously not live because that show aired like in the '60s, I think. You know, I wasn't born until '89, but you know, reruns of it or recordings of it, things like that, would have been my introduction to a lot of that stuff. Greetings from Tomball, Texas. Hello. Jim Fowler was Perkins' protege. Awesome show as a kid. Taught me so much. What's up? What's up? Kingwood. Hello. Psychic Psych Totus from Kingwood. Only been fishing in Kingwood once. Didn't work out for me. I'll be honest with you. This is the longest by far live stream I've ever watched. You're a natural. No, I just like to talk on camera. I was thinking about this earlier. You gotta be a little bit full of yourself to some extent to want to be watched by other people in any capacity and to expect it to work out. You know, whether you are a stage actor or like some kind of film or TV actor, or you're on YouTube or any kind of other social media, or you're a TikTok influencer, if you expect people to take time out of their day aside, like everyone here, you know, got off of work or will be working later, and this is your free time, or you're doing it at work and you're risking your job. Um, and like I am just, oh, guess what? It's live stream time. Drop whatever you're doing and give me your time. It takes a little bit of obnoxious arrogance to do that. So, you know, I will say I don't think I'm a natural at this. I'm not. And the reason I think that is number one. I mean, you can tell a natural when you see a natural. Like Steve Irwin was a natural, but the vast majority of, because I will say I will not hesitate to say that I have quite a bit of skill when it comes to conservation education. I'm very good at it, conservation education, but it's practiced. It took me years. When I first started, I was not very good. I was not very good. When I started teaching people stuff, because I had jobs in the education field before I worked for the Houston Zoo. And when I first started teaching, I was not very good at all. And it took me years and years and years of very specific and labored practice to get better at a variety of aspects of it. And I was obsessive over it. Like, it was all I thought about all day long. It's all I did all day long. Any other person I watched doing anything, I would look at them and be like, you know, what can I take away from this to make myself a better teacher? You know, even if they weren't teaching something, I would look at the way they were talking to people or engaging people. How did they stand? How did they move their body? You guys will notice I never stop moving my hands when I talk. That was one of the things I taught myself how to do, was like, you know, if I was talking about something or describing something to someone who had never seen it before, ever in their life, and I expected them to know exactly what this idea or this image looked like if I made my words as vague as possible, could I still describe it to them by the way I was moving my hands? And I would practice doing that with people. I would give people directions, and I would try to make the directions very, very simple and short and vague. But then I would try to use my hands to like describe the shape of things and stuff, just to see if I ran into that person later, if they were like, "Oh yeah, no, your directions were good. I found what I was looking for." Then I would know, like, well, I certainly didn't describe it very well. So the way I move my hands when I talk must be working. Like I would do like things like that all day long. I would experiment different ways to try to figure out how to be a better teacher of all kinds of information. So I appreciate it when people say I'm a natural, but trust me, it took decades of me obsessively practicing stuff to get good at it. Do you plan to highlight a greater variety of wildlife on the channel? Or do you reckon, since you're known for fishing, that non-fishing videos would have drastically lower view count and engagement? Yes and no. I do think it would have a drastically lower view count and engagement, but that is something that you can overcome. I am going to utilize some of the connections I'm making right now through the conference I'm going to be at to work other stuff into the channel. A lot of reptiles. Reptiles are really good, like if you're trying to get other types of wildlife on the show, reptiles are a really good one to do alongside fish, because quite often, you know, they behave the same. People kind of view them in the same light. They look scary. They're cold-blooded. You know, they live in a lot of the same environments, especially if they're aquatic or semi-aquatic. You have to physically catch them to show them up close to the camera. You know, like you could do a show on wolves. Nobody's going to be like wrangling a wolf with their bare hands to show it to a camera. But if you do a show on alligator gar and you go do a show on Burmese python, guess what? You're going to use almost the same exact technique. Not fishing necessarily, but getting your hands on it, restraining it to the point where you're like trying to show it to a camera. And then, you know, maybe not with Burmese python because they're invasive in Florida where you'd have to go to get them in America. But basically, you know, you have the same format: introduction, the hunt, the catch, the education, the release with both fish and reptiles. So reptiles are going to kind of be my segue into other types of wildlife. And because I'm meeting so many reptile based YouTubers right now, that is going to be kind of the angle I'm going to take to get other animals on the show. Because that was always the point. It was never a fishing show. It's still not a fishing show. It's just fish are kind of the animal that I am have become very successful at talking about on the show. That's why it's called Wildlife and not Wildlife's Fishing or the Fishing Houston show or all that. Probably past you or your wife at the Houston Zoo as a kid, since I go multiple times a year. Um, yeah, I mean, my wife. Hey, babe, how when did you start working at the zoo? 2010. When did you start volunteering at the zoo? Okay, so my wife started volunteering at the zoo in 2003 and started working there professionally in 2010, and she still works there. I started working there in 2011 and left, I want to say, almost 2018. So I was there for like 7 years. So not quite as, I mean, not near as long as she's been there. So very good chance that you pass by me. If you were to go there, you know, today, my wife is still there. You're probably not going to see her, but I mean, if you booked an education program, she's probably the one who made it possible. Lots of hearts and message retracted. I don't want to know what the message was. Is Houston a fine place to live in? I think so. I love Houston. You know, it depends on what you're trying to do. Houston is a really, really diverse city. It's one of the most, in fact, alongside New York, I want to say recently it was listed as having surpassed New York as having the most diverse population in America. There's a lot of opportunities in Houston, uh, in a lot of different fields. Yeah, so in my opinion, it's great. Let's see. I'm trying so hard not to just go into a coughing fit. I'm on the tail end of being sick. I'm not over it yet. Mutual of Omaha was on from 63 to 88. Yeah. Was on before the Wonderful World of Disney for a few years. That's fantastic stuff. I love stuff like that. Just to have knowledge of like wildlife television presentation going back that far is fantastic. Yeah, I was born in 2003, so a very possible chance. Yeah, absolutely. When I was in 2003, I was bitten by a snake. That's my memory from that year. I got bitten by a copperhead in 2003 and had to basically spend the next 7 months of the year learning how to walk again. Hey, I love Houston too, born and raised here. Where am I from? I'm from a town south of Houston called Angleton. Very, very small. Basically, 90% of the people that live there work for Dow Chemical down in like Freeport, as my dad did. Um, yeah, and that's where I'm from. And then I moved to Houston probably around 2016. If Houston wasn't so humid most of the year, it'd be way better. Yeah, the humidity is rough, but what I've come to realize, especially once my income became dependent upon my ability to catch fish that are more active in the hot weather, is I'm totally fine with hot weather. I hate the cold. Cold weather literally means I'm not getting paid as much in a given month, so I hate the cold weather. Glad you recovered and get to do what you do now. Well, recovering. How's the knee? So if you don't know, guys, in the last episode, I got two bad things happen to my knee. Well, there's a bit of history to this. So I have been. Somebody asked me further up the chain of comments, what do I do for fun when I'm not filming? And you got to remember, filming is my job. So it's good that I enjoy doing it, and I really do. I love it. But I do think of it as work, and quite often it can get exhausting and tiring and frustrating, and I don't want to do it. But I have been a martial artist for almost 20 years now. Man, it's a long time. I've been a martial artist for almost 20 years, different types of martial arts. I've been a mixed martial artist for like the last 15 years. And before that, I was a classically trained martial artist. Taekwondo was my classical background. I'm pretty sure I bring this up almost every time because somebody always asks me, what do you do when you're not fishing? And this is always the answer. Um, I'm a martial artist. That's what I do. That's what I love to do. And I love to do it more than fishing. And in fact, if conservation education wasn't so important to me on like an ethical level, I would probably not have done a YouTube channel for wildlife. I probably would have tried to do something on martial arts. And as far as the enjoyment of actually creating the show, I'd probably enjoy a martial arts based show just as much. But anyway, the reason I'm bringing this up is because when I was about, I'm going to say 23, I was working out. And what did I do? I did something, I threw a kick. And I want to say it was just like a high roundhouse kick. And blew my knee out in the process. My left knee just tore it to shreds. And it was not the same. It still hasn't been the same. This is like 10 years ago at least, maybe more. And my left knee has always been extremely sensitive. Sometimes when I train, I'll train with a knee brace on. In everyday life, it's fine. And 99% of the time when I'm training, it's fine as well. But occasionally, it'll start acting up if I don't work out enough. If I like have a couple of weeks, like this is a good example. I'm sick. I cannot do a whole lot without just like going. I mean, as you can see, I can barely talk. But if I was to start working out right now, even basic stuff like stretching, I would start coughing. So a couple of weeks have gone by and I haven't been able to work out very well. My knee will start getting weak and it will be re-injured so easily. So my left knee has always had issues. And when I was fishing the other week, the last video, the one that's actually up right now is my most recent video, I was going down this hill, very steep hill, to catch, this alligator gar to rope it. I had landed it for the most part and I just needed to get the rope over it. It's about a 100-pound fish. So not a gigantic alligator gar, but a very, very good one. By the way, that's one of my favorite things about my current status in the world of fishing is that I can now call 100-pound fish just okay. Yeah, I love being able to do that. But anyway, I'm going down the steep hill, and this is on video. You can see it when it happens. And I take this very long step going forward so that I am almost doing like a front split, which is not that hard, honestly. I have a Taekwondo background. I'm very flexible. I can kick well above my own height. However, when you stretch out vertically, you run the risk of being tipped side to side, obviously much easier, and that puts an enormous amount of lateral pressure on your knee. So your knee is meant to move, in and out. It is absolutely not meant to have lateral pressure put on it. If you guys watch a lot of jiu-jitsu or submission grappling, which depending on the day is my favorite part of martial arts, it changes based upon what I'm watching. But I think if you were to have a reactometer to Peyton, how loud Peyton yells when he watches martial arts competitions. I think when somebody starts pulling some really slick like sweeps or submission attempts, that's when I get the loudest. So jiu-jitsu is probably my favorite part of martial arts. If you guys watch people, like Mikey Musumeci, really it's everyone now. But Lachlan Giles was one of the first guys to really originate the Danaher Death Squad. Craig Jones, Gordon Ryan, guys like that were kind of the guys who would pioneer a lot of these modern leg entanglements to heel hook people. If you don't know what a heel hook is, just look it up. A lot of people have the wrong idea of how it works. They think that it's like imagine someone's toes are here, and I've got their heel hooked in the crook of my elbow, and I've got some kind of like grip, whether I'm holding my own gi or I've got like my two hands together, which I can't do because I'm holding a phone. And then you have like a a leg entanglement where it's called a reap, where your one leg is crossing over the other, that leg of your opponent is coming right up the middle, and you have that configuration where their toes are tucked behind your armpit, and you've got the heel hooked in your. It would be this one. It would be hooked in your arm, and one leg, usually the leg that's on the inside position, is crossing over in what's called a reap, and then your other leg can lock over it. It can stabilize the opponent's hip. A lot of times you're using it to kick their hands away because they're trying to sit up and defend with their hands. And a lot of people think when you do a heel hook, you're twisting the heel, because that's the motion you see most clearly, is that people are rotating the leg. But that isn't the actual attack. The rotation of the leg is what immobilizes it into the attack position. And the attack is actually an extension of the hip. So you'll see guys, it's very subtle, but watch Gordon Ryan do it, watch Lachlan Giles do it. You'll see their shoulders will shift back, their hips will push out forward like that. And what it is actually putting an enormous amount of lateral pressure on the knee. So imagine like your knee bends like your elbow, but imagine someone's trying to force it to bend, this way or that way. It's horrific stuff. And that is kind of what happened to me when I went into that position. I kind of stretched my own legs out. I immobilized my own legs accidentally by getting into that position. And just all that momentum going downhill kind of threw me over to one side and put a ton of lateral pressure on my knee. And I felt a tendon just, I believe, I'm not a doctor, but my sister has a condition in her knee, and it's called a maltracking, what is it called? It's like a maltracking kneecap or something like that. Basically, the idea is being that like your tendon will slip out of place, and then it like has to like be pulled across the bones in your knee, pop back into position. And that's what happened, I think, just based on the feel of it. I felt my tendons almost, it felt like they were being pulled across the bones in my leg, out of position. And that's when you hear me scream on the camera because it hurt so bad. And then they pop back into position, and it hurt just unbelievably bad. It's better than it tearing, which is what could have happened. It could have just blown out, some of the ligaments in my knee. But my ligaments kind of like popped in and out of position. They were I believe, not a doctor, but I do jujitsu, so I know what it's like to attack and have people attack my legs for the intent of hurting your tendons. And it really, really hurt. And then on top of that, an alligator gar, the one I was trying to land, flipped over and smacked me with its head right on my knee, and it so hard. You can hear the audio on the film. It sounds like somebody hitting a baseball. And it just swole up. My whole knee swole up for like 3 days. But it's much better now. So thank you for asking. Oh, the Copperhead story. There's not much to it. I was very young at the time. I was like 13, almost 14 years old. So 2003, I would have been about almost 14 because I was born in 89. And I was crazy. I wanted to be Steve Irwin. So I just run around all day trying to catch snakes and frogs and alligators and things like that. And I've been bitten by an alligator as well, trying to catch it. And I had caught a eastern ribbon snake, and I kept aquariums, and I would catch snakes. I would keep them for a few days, and then I'd let them go. Because I just didn't have all the expensive equipment as a kid that you need to properly care for snakes and other reptiles. So I'd keep them for a short time, and I'd let them go. And I had caught this ribbon snake, and I didn't have a very good lid for the terrarium. And if anyone out there keeps reptiles, I think a lot of you might, one of the things that you will know is that snakes are absolute wizards at getting out of things you tried to keep them in. In my opinion, they're probably the best animal in the world at it. Primates are up there because obviously they can think like you and me. They can actually like unscrew things, and they can pick locks. There's a couple of cases in a particular zoo where an orangutan hit a paperclip in his lip, and he would use it to pick the lock. It's just because he wanted to be in different parts of the zoo. That'll happen sometimes. But as far as an animal that doesn't have that level of human-like intelligence, snakes are just the absolute best at getting out of stuff. Octopus are better than snakes, but I would argue they have that kind of human-like intelligence. So snakes can constantly get out of things. So I was trying to find this wooden board that I could cut to the exact shape of the terrarium to replace the one I had that I wasn't happy with.
So what do? You have all this plywood. I lived out in the middle of nowhere. Angleton, Texas is way out in the swamps. And I was picking up this big piece of plywood. And mind you, I'm barefoot because I was an idiot. And I pick up this big piece of plywood that's on the ground and I'm looking at it. And by the way, as even a 13-year-old, I knew more about wildlife and how to handle it and how to act around it than most people ever will. Um, but that's part of the problem. Number one, when you're 13, you're never as good at what you're doing as you think you are at the time. That's obviously the biggest problem. But second, when you know a lot about something, you can be complacent, and that, I mean, we were talking about Steve Irwin later. That's literally how the guy died. He was complacency because of how good he was at what he did. He pushed his boundaries too far. But anyway, I had looked at the ground knowing there were probably going to be copperheads, which was the most common venomous snake we would find in that area. And I inspected the ground and I was like, okay, there's nothing here. So I'm going to turn my attention to the board. And, they're just most well camouflaged animal in the world. And I didn't look carefully enough. So nothing's happening. And I threw the board back the other way. And when the board hit the ground, I felt this sensation on my leg. And the best way I can describe and I was actually confused at the time. I didn't know what was happening. It felt like a crab. Imagine a crab pinching. I'm going to show you on my face because I can show you on my arm. There we go. Imagine a crab pinching the very, very outer layer of skin on your body very, very hard and then like moving. That's what it felt like. And I was very confused because I was like, that's impossible. There's not crabs out here. That's literally what went through my mind because that's the only thing I had to compare it to. I was like, what is happening? And I looked down and there's just this copperhead sitting by my foot. And there's a little hole in my ankle with a little bit of blood trickling down it. And I was like, oh, God damn it. Like in my brain, hey. My front door isn't shut all the way, so the wind blew it open a bit, and she's mad. I know. You gotta calm down. You gotta calm down. We got a bit of a haircut today, but we haven't done her face yet. Hey, go see Mama. Go. Anyway, and I was just like, oh, I got bit by a snake. I knew so much about that process and what was about to happen to me and like how miserable it was going to be. Like I knew what I was in for. At least I thought I did. And I went and I will never forget this. If my mother is watching this, I will never forget this. This is the look you need to. This will tell you everything you need to know about how I was as a 13-year-old. I walked inside and I was trying to remain very calm because that's one of the things. I was like, you don't panic, especially with a snake bite. But I mean, really, any medical emergency. That's kind of like the biggest thing you can do to help yourself is just don't panic. So I calmly walked inside and I told my mother, I was like, hey, I got bit by a snake. And my mother's response was to her 13-year-old boy getting bitten by a venomous snake, it was exactly this. It was, get in the car, just like that. Because she knew it was going to happen at some point. It was like, of course he got bit by a snake. Of course he did. Like, I'm surprised it took so long. Like, get in the car. Not because she didn't care, but because she was just like, God damn it. Like, of course he got bit by a snake. So, we went to the hospital and, then that's when, you know, the pain started setting in. And I am 34 years old right now. I will openly brag about having one of the highest pain tolerances of anyone I've ever met, uh, which is substantial because I know a bunch of dudes who are professional fighters, and I like know a variety of people that have been mauled by different animals. Um, and I'll put my pain tolerance against any of them any day. I can't fight as well as a lot of the fighters that I know, but my pain tolerance is up there. And I will tell you right now, if you have not been bitten by a venomous snake, um, that it's just like nothing you've felt before. Once that pain starts setting in, it is just something else. And you just start to feel this like horrific swelling. And it's like someone's like pumping your leg full of air. And it's like you're skin can't expand fast enough to accommodate it. It feels like your leg's going to blow up. It's just like this deep ache that you can't you can't trace the source of it because it's just this horrific ache throughout your entire leg. And it's like at that point I'm like okay, I got this. I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. And the pain is just getting worse and worse. And we get into the hospital, and we get in there, and they're like, "Oh, he got bit by a snake," and they're like, "Okay, let's treat this one, fairly seriously." One of the things that stands out to me about that experience is they put me on a stretcher, and my mom is there, my dad is there. I can't remember. I think my older brother might have been there at some point as well. But I'm on the stretcher waiting for someone to just you're in the like the part of the ER where you're just kind of waiting to be taken care of. There's like this half open screen. And there's a hallway and you can see these different rooms. And one of the things that stood out to me, I still remember, was there were multiple people in bathing suits in the hospital, and they were still soaking wet, and they were just bawling their eyes out. And I'm assuming somebody drowned. And that was probably most of the priority about what was being taken care of, because I waited for 4 hours on that stretcher with my leg just like swelling and turning different colors, different shades of purple and black. It was horrible. And copperheads, by the way, are not that venomous in the grand scheme of snakes. Like I think 4 people on record. That was the accurate number 20 years ago when this happened. I don't know. That might have gone up by now, but like 4 people ever at the time had died from a copperhead on record. Like 2 of them were kids. One of them was like 80 years old. You're probably not going to die if you get bit by a copperhead, but you will be in the most miserable pain of your life for like 48 hours. And then you'll spend the rest of the year learning how to walk again. So 4 hours go by. Doctors finally come in. They're having all these discussions about the stuff they're going to do. And then here's where things start getting really bad. They got to do a blood test, which is, they're going to use urine to test your blood content. So I have to go do a urine sample, and I have to walk to do it. You have to get up and get in a wheelchair. You have to get out of the wheelchair to do the sample, then you have to get back in, and you have to go back to the stretcher. You have to get up out of the wheelchair to get back in the stretcher. And in that process, I ended up putting my body weight on my leg like twice. And at first, I didn't notice anything. And then the most horrible pain of my entire life starts setting in. And the best thing I can think to compare it to in terms of like the sensation of the pain setting in is like when you eat like the spiciest thing you've ever had in your life. Like have you ever tried like a ghost pepper or something? You know how like it doesn't hurt right away, but then you're like, oh man, like here it comes. Oh my god, like I feel it now. That's what started happening to my leg. And it was just, oh, I can't even describe the pain. I mean, I'm sure it would suck now, but as a 13-year-old, it was like nothing I have ever experienced. And I've been bitten and mauled by so many animals, including venomous animals, since then. And I've never felt pain like that before. I've been bitten by alligators. I've been bitten by zebras, centipedes, scorpions, a brown recluse, parrots, different dogs. Like, I've been bitten by, I'm forgetting, I got bit by a black-tip shark. Like, I've been bitten by an alligator gar. I've been bitten by more horrifically painful animals than most people. And nothing compared to that. Nothing compared to that. So, spent the night. The nurse, who was a trainee, I'm going to swear a little bit here. So, if swearing if you don't like it, plug your ears. But the nurse psychologically fucked me up for the rest of my life because this trainee, unsupervised mind you, put an IV in your arm, your elbow, which if you can see that little pink dot on my elbow, that's the scar from where it happened. And this nurse put this damn IV off center and did not get it into the vein the way it was supposed to go, and left it there for about 10 hours. And, I'm not a doctor. My mother's not a doctor. My father's not a doctor. We don't know that something is wrong, but we know that my arm is starting to hurt as bad as my leg. And eventually, like, one of the lead doctors come in and they're like, "Oh my god, like, hang on, we gotta fix this." And they had to take it out and redo it. And you'd think the doctor would just do it. No, the doctor had the trainee do it again and again. Do it like 3 times. And ever since then, I have been absolutely horrified of anything needle related. Anything. I can't watch it on TV. I can't see one in person. It will make me like physically. I can't. I can't do it. It'll make me physically ill to see a needle touch another person's. I can't even talk about it right now. It's so bad. It's so bad. Um, I can't. Can't. Because of that experience. It's just, I've never been able to deal with it since then. Um, anyway, spent the night. Did not require antivenin. Thankfully, didn't require steroids. Thankfully, it was on the table. They were discussing whether I would need it or not, and they decided that he's young. It's a copperhead. It's not a rattlesnake. It's not like a more venomous variety of snake with a more damaging, like, potent level and amount of venom and all that. So they didn't give me those things. Thank goodness. That's a good thing. You kind of want it for the story, like, oh, they had to give me antivenin and steroids, but really you don't, because that means you're in more trouble. So got out of the hospital and I spent the next like 3 months on crutches. Your leg doesn't stop like being swollen and tender for months after that. I was useless. I could do nothing. I spent weeks and months on crutches, and then I spent months after that, being able to walk without a limp, and it was 7 full months before I could jog after that. So yeah, that's the copperhead story, and the question that I usually get after this is, did you stop handling snakes? And the answer is, of course I didn't. I still do it all the time. I still did it even on crutches. I would go catch snakes. So it's yeah, no, I love snakes. I love snakes so much, and there's nobody to blame in that entire situation except for myself and the fucking nurse that put the IV in my arm the wrong way. And if you're watching this, if you are like, "Oh yeah, I remember once when I was before I was, like, had 4 PhDs in medicine and all that. Like, I did one of my first patients that I helped work on. I put an IV in a snakebite kid's arm the wrong way. I hate you." I'm in. Okay, I'm Southwest Houston with my son. Likes to fish with me. Where can I fish with them? Here by Golfton Renrick. I don't know exactly where that is, but I mean, don't underestimate well manicured parks. Things like Telfair Park in Sugarland. That's a really great place. Really well manicured parks are often great places to find fish. Somebody's saying take him to McGregor Park. I would say be careful about that. McGregor Park is, I mean, yeah, the fishing there is great. Big alligator gar, catfish, buffalo carp, but it's hard to access. It's dirty. There's a lot of garbage in the water, and it's not that easy to fish. The terrain is a little bit difficult. If you want a place that's safe, because I don't know how old you didn't say how old your kid was. I would say look around a nicer part of town like Sugarland and look for like parks that look almost too nice to have fish. I promise you, they have great fish, and they have everything from bluegill to like 7, 8 pound bass in them. Dinner time. Have a good dinner. I gotta cook dinner in a little bit. I'm gonna go for like another 10, 15 minutes at most, and then I have to cook dinner. Ever fish in the DFW area? Where is that? Oh, my wife just shouted out Dallas Fort Worth. Um, yes, I'm trying to remember if I made a successful video out of it. I think I fished the area and didn't get a good video, but I did find a spot that I want to go back to very recently, so I will be there soon. A shark? Question mark? Question mark. If you mean like, have I been bitten by one? Yes, I have. No, not like a big shark. I was unhooking a shark I had caught, and it grabbed a hold of that thumb. I don't know if you guys will see it, because the picture I think I'm seeing on my phone of me is probably clearer and less pixelated than what you're seeing. And even under good conditions. The lighting in my house is not great, but I don't know if you can see these long lines running down the length of my thumb, but those are scars from a shark's teeth ripping through my thumb. So yeah, I've been bitten by a black tip shark. I had it on YouTube for a while, but I had to delete it because YouTube was cracking down on like stuff it would deem as being too violent or even though it was not animal cruelty. If anything, animals getting me. Um, it's an algorithm, it's a computer program, and it's looking for combinations of things like animals and blood and the way humans are reacting. It's like a computer trying to find all these little things. It will misidentify stuff as animal cruelty, and I was like, ooh, this is cutting it kind of close, so let's not put it on YouTube. We have carp here in Indiana. Invasive. Oh yeah, the big head carp get 40 plus inches, and I'm trying to build a channel on catching them. I fillet them and take the meat to work where there is a surplus. Yeah, that's the thing. Big head carp, horribly invasive up in your area, as you're saying. If you guys don't know, the carp that I catch, the common carp are naturalized. Like Texas Parks and Wildlife have published information saying that like we do not care about releasing them anymore because they do not damage the environment. And a lot of people are like, well, how come they haven't changed the laws? Because changing the law is a headache on a headache on a headache, and honestly, it's not worth it. They basically just published some info being like, you know what, like we haven't changed the law, but we don't care. Put them back if you want. But big head carp, very damaging in the Midwest. Really, really, just suffocating out other species. And it's not the fish's fault; it's the people's fault for putting them in there. But one of the reasons, or one of the things that would help with that situation is if people in America were not so picky about uh, the reputation of what they're eating. Because so much of what we eat is just arbitrary. We think of animals as being good to eat or weird to eat just because it's what we're used to hearing about eating. There was a school teacher, I can't remember if they were a teacher or a cafeteria worker. They might have been a cafeteria worker in the Midwest a few years ago who got fired over serving kangaroo meat. And it was legally sourced and legally attained, and they had all the permission to utilize it. They didn't break any rules to do it. But people were like, what? Kangaroo? Oh, that's disgusting. It's like, why? Why would you eat a pig and not a kangaroo? Kangaroo meat, for those of you who don't know, is extremely lean. It's very good for you. Um, I'm willing to bet you that a lot of people in America use kangaroo products and don't even know it. Kangaroo hide is one of the more expensive types of leather that you can have. If you buy a nice bullwhip, you have a kangaroo hide product. But people just freak out about the idea of eating meat from an animal that doesn't come from America, as if like that somehow makes it not good to eat, which is the stupidest thing ever. Um, Again, case in point, pork, pigs are an introduced species. Um, so people freak out when they're eating an animal that they have not grown up thinking about as a food animal. And that's one of the problems with trying to get people to eat things like carp is people think of it and they're like, ah, it's disgusting. But if you gave it to them and they didn't know what it was, especially if it was like fried in some way, they'd probably enjoy it. So yeah, man, let me know when you have your channel up and running. Maybe it is up and running, but like send me a link. I want to see it. More people need to eat, invasive species. That's probably not how the problem's going to be solved. Even if you built a market around it, invasive species like big head carp reproduce so incredibly fast that they can't remove them fast enough even right now without eating them. So what people are doing with the ones that are being caught, um, yes, if you establish a market for eating the animal, what that will do is it will drive up the profitability and the incentive for more people to build institutions based on removing them. That's the point. Um, the point is not to be like, well, we already killed these animals. Will somebody eat them? The point is to incentivize more people to make a system of removing them. And while it will help, it's probably not going to be the thing that solves the problem. I've talked about this so many times with invasive species. I guarantee you it is going to be some kid who is in high school right now somewhere. They are going to come up through the zoology world and they are going to come up with an idea that is so outside the box brilliant that nobody thought of it. Nobody thought of it. And there's examples of this throughout the world where like very, very young people. Africa is a good example because Africa and India. I say Africa. Africa's an entire continent, but I'm thinking about like specific countries within Africa, like Botswana, things like that, Tanzania, um, where people have like this unbelievably like high chance of encountering dangerous animals, specifically because they're trying to use the area for farmland, and the area is not farmland. It had to be cultivated into farmland by the Dutch when the Dutch moved into Africa. That's how that all kind of started, and basically you have all these predators being like, "Oh, those cows." Don't fight back like those ones, those wildebeest over there, those water buffalo, those cows are suckers. I'll go eat those cows instead. And then you have farmers who are trying to make their living off of, these introduced agricultural animals, um, you know, very understandably trying to feed their family. And you have these like lions and leopards and hyenas and stuff being like, those are the really easy cows to eat. I'm going to go eat those ones. And you have these conflicts that arise between wildlife that is on the decline now that they're trying to eat these farm animals. Understandably, you brought a farm animal to a country that it wasn't supposed to be in, and it's easy pickings for the predators. It's not the predator's fault that it's being a predator. However, we also understand you got to feed your family somehow, and this is the way you've got to do it. So tensions arise, and people start trying to kill these animals that are already on the decline, and everybody's trying to figure out what are these ways to navigate these situations that nobody's thought of. When elephants are trying to migrate, and they migrate through these like urban areas that are getting built up throughout different parts of what was once a more wild part of Africa. You have elephants coming into contact with like various villages and stuff, and again, farmland being a big part of it. You have elephants being like, "Oh, look at all the crops over there. That's good stuff. I'm going to eat all that sugar-filled, crops. Those sweet potatoes look so good." And elephants will just kind of move in and, they'll eat the crops. And what do? Well, you have all these like brilliant young minds coming out of that part of the world that are just coming up with these ideas that are blowing the roof off of the thought process that we had approached the problem with before. And there was this one kid, I can't remember his name, and he came up with and I say kid because he was a kid. He was like in his young teens when he did this. It was a few years ago. He's probably in his mid-20s now. But he came up with this system of a solar-powered rotating system of lights that would run throughout the night, because this kid brilliantly learned somehow, I don't know how he did it, but basically he figured out a pattern with lion behavior that lions do not like lights that move. And granted, all animals are kind of weary of moving lights, but lions in particular really had an aversion to it. Like, they do not like it at all, even comparative to a lot of other animals. Lions do not like moving lights. So this kid came up with a system where he came up with this like moving set of lights that were solar powered, and the farmland that they would start implementing this kid's new system on stopped having problems with lions trying to kill the livestock. And the farmers didn't have to kill the lions. The farmers weren't losing their livestock. Everybody benefited because this kid came up with this completely unthought of idea. And same thing with elephants. The elephant one is really cool because it used a more natural idea that nobody had thought of. Elephants hate bees. Did you guys know that elephants are absolutely terrified of bees? They hate them. Elephants hate bees. People think elephants are scared of mice. They're not, but they are scared of bees. They hate them. So villagers were like, "Hey, I got an idea. Let's get double the bang for our buck here. Let's start using bees as a way not only to pollinate our crops, and if they're honeybees, you can harvest another product from this animal. The beehives are built along these fence lines. They also keep the elephants out of their crops without ever having to interact with the elephants." Absolutely mind-blowing idea that came out of left field. Nobody ever saw that coming, and somebody was just like, "Wait a minute, I have a solution." And that's the kind of thing that's going to solve a lot of invasive species problems in America. I think it's going to be the next generation of conservationists. It's going to be young thinkers, young minds, who are thinking outside the box. America has had a long history of trying to solve every problem by shooting stuff. And I mean, like, literally every problem that is somehow part of the solution, whether it's wildlife based or not. America's unhealthy obsession with guns bleeds into wildlife conservation at a stupid rate. And people think like, oh, this animal's causing problems. I know. Shoot the thing. Shoot it. Shoot it. Guns. Gun the thing. That will solve problem. It's like, no, it won't. It doesn't. It never has. There has never been a like broad wildlife problem that has been solved by people shooting stuff. That has only ever made problems worse or been used as a patch job to a problem. It's going to be something Americans need to kind of, and I'm talking to you as an American from the South, so I can talk like this about American gun culture regarding like wildlife, because I'm a wildlife professional and I'm from America and I'm from Houston, Texas. We have got to give up our obsession with trying to kill stuff as a way to solve problems, because it's just not going to work. It's not going to work. We got to start thinking outside the box with wildlife problems. Killing things is not going to be the answer. Let's see. Caught a million bass in Kingwood in the past couple of days. Oh, I might be going up towards Kingwood in the next couple of days if this rain stops. I look this way because my window is over there and it's raining outside my window right now. A word I'm in Atasak. I can't say that without butchering it. You don't have apparel that's comfortable to fish in. Tribor Outdoors. I got to shout out my apparel sponsor on the live stream. Tribor Outdoors. Link in the description of all my videos. Let's see. Have any interesting location videos that have been recorded but are in the process of editing? Well, I have a video ready to go that I've been talking about this whole time. That's one of the reasons I want to do the live stream, guys. Massive fish coming up in the next video. When you see that video come up, definitely subscribe to it. Watch it. Subscribe if you're not already. So yes, and I have a video coming up on the Patreon page that is in the process of being uploaded right now. I'm looking past my phone to my laptop that I'm uploading a video on. Also, if you've been wondering, this has the Pen Fierce that I'm giving away in it. I have the Pen Fierce right here. I'm going to give it away very soon. I'm probably going to announce the winner in the comments of the upcoming video. So the very next video that you see on my channel, I will announce who wins this reel. And then later on, I'll announce it on a broad scale. So basically, yes, I'm using this giveaway to get you to watch my video. Let's see. After fishing for alligator gar, have you ever accidentally set a bass into the stratosphere with a hook set? No, because bass aren't eating, half a carp. When you throw out a bait the size of your own head and it starts moving off, something big has it. Let's see. It was cold enough to wear the wildlife hoodie today. Probably the last time until next winter. I hope so. I mean, I love that you're wearing it, but my God, I hope this cold weather just goes away. Let's see. Yeah, see, this I'm going to read your comment verbatim because it's exactly correct. Firearms have not fixed the feral hog issue, but it also doesn't hurt anything. Probably the only firearms relevant quasi-solution. Yeah, that's exactly the thing. So, like, feral pigs, shoot them all you want. Shoot them all you want. Eat them. They're not bad. I mean, some of them are. Apparently, if you eat, like, the big males, they don't taste good. But shoot all the feral pigs you can. They are, again, it's not their fault. Poor pigs, just trying to be pigs. We brought them over here. European settlers brought them over here, and they got loose, and they, became, a very close version of, like, the Black Forest hogs over in Eurasia very quickly. And they're incredibly destructive. So, yeah, absolutely. I have, by the way, guys, I am, just to be very, very clear, because, like, again, most of the people, I feel comfortable talking about it on the live stream because most of the people here are the more dedicated subscribers, so I don't think you're gonna leave if you're like, oh my god, he doesn't think exactly the same way I do about every issue. Like, I'm not gonna bring most of this stuff up on the main channel. Um, when it comes to like gun ownership, I have a couple of guns, but I have them specifically for animal related issues. My dog is so mad at me right now. I don't know if you guys can hear her chuffing at me. Chuffing, by the way, is the descriptor to the sound the animals make when they go like that. A lot of mammals will do that, like big cats. It's called chuffing, so I call it chuffing when my dog does that. You'll hear tigers do that a lot when tigers are trying to get another tiger's attention or they're unhappy about something. Tigers will chuff. Um, but anyway, talking about guns, yeah. After I ran into a mountain lion in the middle of the night, I was like, 1 in a million chance of that happening. But what if I ever want to go back to that area? Or what if I see I have the other channel? I haven't uploaded on the other channel in forever because I've just been so busy trying to get this one to work in the cold weather. But the other channel is food related. Where does your food come from? The animals don't fall over dead. Somehow the animal is being killed. Whether you get your food from a grocery store, the animal's probably, I do this move right here. The No Country for Old Men cow dispatcher is what I'm doing with that. It's not a gun sign. The cow dispatcher thing. Your food is probably dispatched like that, or chickens are done like on a massive level. By the way, chickens are like the most horrifically mistreated agriculture animal in the world. It's really gross when you start learning about how a lot of chickens are treated in captivity. It's disgusting. But anyway, um, I am well aware that if you're going to eat an animal, somehow that animal has to be killed. And I'm I hate using the word foodie because I hate it so much. I appreciate and love the art of food and cooking so much. I'm not that great at it. I'm decent at it, but I love and appreciate the art. Where did that food come from? It came from somewhere. If you're eating meat, I love eating steak. I love eating seafood. I love eating, I don't like pork so much. Just it's not my favorite. But that food was dispatched, and if you're going out into the wild and you are dispatching some type of food for the dinner table, as long as it is not an animal that is threatened or near threatened, or like one of those animals that like is only allowed to be killed because your state has the worst wildlife laws, like mine does. There are quite a few animals you can kill and eat in Texas that you should never, ever, ever have been allowed to kill. As long as it's not an animal like that, like you will never catch me killing an alligator gar. It's not gonna happen. Um, you're never, ever, ever gonna catch me doing any kind of like recreational hunting. I hate that so much. There's just no point to it. But like, yeah, shoot a pig, eat it. Shoot a deer, eat it. Shoot an elk, eat it. I'm totally fine with that. I have a couple of firearms for that because I was trying to do more hunting on the food show, and because I was like, what if I want to do another overnight? In the area where I ran into that mountain lion, 10 million to 1 chance that it happens. 50 million 1 chance that it ever happens again. But just in case, I'm going to have something with me just in case. That's why I have stuff like that. Again, most people, you may not know, because honestly, I don't talk about it that much, but if you put two and two together, it should become very obvious. My political leanings are, I will put it this way, they are not to the right. And if you think about my professional background as being an educator from a zoo, I have a professional zoology and education background. It should become kind of obvious, like where I land on a lot of political topics. And you'll notice that if I ever do talk about firearms and stuff like that, I have like low capacity, old fashioned types of firearms because I don't like the other kinds at all. I hate them. Hate them. Um, and I can't remember why I started talking about any of this. Oh yeah, the firearms haven't fixed the federal hog issue. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Typically speaking, I can't think of a single issue, except there is one issue that has been solved very effectively with weaponry. I'm going to stop talking about the F word or the G word, just because I don't want to get censored or anything like that. And also, it's not what you're here for. It's not what you're here for. But basically, a fascist regime from the 1930s and 40s was very effectively solved with weaponry, and I'm cool with that. But I mean, that's really it. What size? Let's get back to fishing. Let's get back to wildlife. What size is the Pen Fierce you're giving away? Oh yes, it is an 8,000 and it's a live liners. That's why the box is so big. Pen Fierce 4, size 8,000, and it has a live liner. So basically, I thought to myself, if you guys wanted to catch alligator gar or giant catfish or even sharks, you can catch sharks on this, um, within reason. What would be the reel that you'd want? And I thought Pen Fierce 8,000 live liner, the newest version, the 4. I'm gonna turn this box around because I don't know if my address is on that sticker. But that's what's in the box. That's what I'm giving away. So you just put a Fierce 4 8,000 on a B&M Silvercat Elite, and that setup rocks. Yeah, I'm surprised you're able to get a reel that big on this B&M. Oh, the B&M Silvercat Elite. No, I was thinking of the what's the other one I use so often? Big Cat Fever. Big Cat Fever reel seats are too short for the Pen Fierce reels. That's why I have the Daiwa BG on mine. I do have a B&M Silvercat Elite. I have a multiplier reel on it, but those are good rods. The multiplier reels tend to shift from side to side a lot when I'm fighting fish on those reels, on those rods. So what I ended up doing is I put a piece of shrink tube about this big over the reel seat and shrank it down real tight. So when I clamp the reel on with a clamp on the back, it bites into the rubber and it stopped the reel from rotating side to side on the rod, so it stays lined up with the rod rings better. What spinning rods do I use and recommend? Money doesn't matter. That's good because I use cheap stuff anyway, relatively speaking. Um, let's see. Let's go big fish in freshwater. Alligator gar. I use Denali bottom feeder rods. They're heavy and medium heavy action. Although I would say I lost a couple of giant fish that I'm convinced were over 7 feet long with the Denali medium heavy because they were so far away and the rod just wasn't quite heavy enough to drive the hook home. So if you are interested in catching truly gigantic fish like 7+ gar, go with the heavy action Denali bottom feeder. The medium heavy spinning rod of the Big Cat Fever is incredible. That is what I caught this massive fish you're about to see coming up on. Multiple hundreds of pounds. I caught bull sharks on it too. So Big Cat Fever, medium heavy, Big Cat Fever heavy action, casting rods, the Denali bottom feeder rods. The B&M Silvercat Elite is a really good rod. Those are the ones I use for big gar and catfish. For surf fishing, again, I don't like to get too fancy. I use like ugly stick, like the big water surf rods. For bass fishing, light tackle, I am very cheap. I will go with the Daiwa Laguna rods. They are great. And then my favorite rods for really tough freshwater fish, like snakeheads and stuff like that, are the Fenwick Elite series of rods. And by the way, just to be clear, I'm not sponsored by any of those brands. I don't work with any fishing tackle companies at the moment. But I can just tell you from wanting to share, because you're asking what works, those all work so incredibly well. Any rod recommendations for the reel that I'm giving away? Yeah, I would say Denali bottom feeder heavy action spinning rod would be incredible on it. I particularly love the length of those rods. When am I coming to throw a line in the water here in New Zealand? Oh God, not soon enough. Not soon enough. That's a huge trip. I'm trying to get some trips done throughout different parts of the U.S. before I do overseas. And when I start doing overseas, it'll probably be Europe first. Is this multiple hundreds of pounds fish a saltwater fish? Not going to tell you. What I've learned is that if you start giving away too much information about a video, people are less likely to click on it. So I won't tell you, but it's gigantic. It's gigantic. All right, guys, I'm about ready to start checking out of here. Did I miss any super interesting questions? A nice compliment. Killer Bee Outdoors. That is a cool name, by the way. Killer Bee Outdoors. I enjoy your videos, man. Thanks. Thank you so much. Psychic Psych Toad telling a story about he used to be a surgical technologist. That's cool. I didn't know that. You might have told me that when we met, because Psychic Psych Toad is on the Patreon, guys. If you don't know, on the Patreon, by the way, we need to do this again when the weather clears up. I will fish with the people would ask me. Somebody was asking me earlier, do I fish with the subscribers? Not that often, but I do try to make a point of fishing with everyone on my Patreon. I have these big Patreon fishing days, and I need to do another one soon. So I've met Psychics like Toad a couple of times, and I don't remember if you told me that you did that before, but that's cool. You shattered a girl's nose with basically a hammer and a chisel. Ugh. Ugh. I mean, you got to do what you got to do. Medical procedures. Sometimes you got to break stuff to fix stuff. Been a sub for 2 years, but since I have the job now, you need to get on the Patreon. It would be appreciated for sure. Again, if you guys don't know, the Patreon page, a lot of people here are probably on the Patreon. Um, but I used to have different tiers of prices. I got rid of the tiers. The entire Patreon, every single bit of it, the fishing spot essays I do, the extra videos, getting to fish with me on the Patreon fishing days, all of it, $5 a month. Every last bit of the Patreon, $5 a month. All right, guys, I am losing my voice, and I need to go cook dinner because I'm the chef in this house. All right, I will check you guys later. Watch the video coming up this Saturday. Giant fish. I'm so proud of this video. I love it. I love it, love it, love it. This video is one of my favorites I've ever done. One of my favorite fish releases I've ever done. A new tactic that I pull out of the bag to catch this fish that I'm quite proud of. Tune in Saturday morning. That video is coming. It's going to be awesome. And in the comments of that video, you will learn if you have won this reel. If you haven't already entered, all you got to do is share the video I caught the biggest fish you've ever seen. You'll find the link to that on the post section of YouTube. It's the giant gar video that I caught. You either have to comment on that video 1 million, like say those words on it, you're in the running. And if you want a second entry, share the video, send me photo proof you did it. Because Saturday's video, I will tell you if you won this reel. All right, guys, I am checking out here. Y'all have a great, great night.